implementation of revenue management. Why do it? And it's really about when bookings are made, when people, the time people purchase something. You know, it could be an airline seat, it could be a hotel room, it could be a cabin on a cruise ship, it could be all kinds of things. So what you see here is something that we're going to be looking at a lot in the future. And that's, do you know what that is? Can you tell me what we might call that curve? Any idea? Sorry? Did someone say booking something? It's a booking curve, right, that shows, very good, booking pace. Yeah? It's a booking curve that shows booking pace. So the speed at which bookings are made. Okay? And that's really important. And that's the basis of revenue management. So this DBA, and you're going to see this a lot in the future, stands for days before arrival. So how many days before arrival do most of the reservations come in? Okay? And on this axis, this is the number, in this case of rooms, but it could be seats, it could be cabins, it could be, you know, anything, passengers. So in the case of hotels, we know that 150 days before arrival, or 120 days before arrival, quite far out before the actual day, we start to get requests, group requests. And the first requests that come in fact, the contracts with tour operators need to be signed 18 months before arrival. And that's the same with other tourism businesses too. Working with a tour operator, they need to get their brochures out into the travel agencies at least, 1 year ahead, if not longer. They've got to have photographs, they've got to have prices, they've got to know everything so that they can actually prepare. So very early on, we get requests. So in restaurants, instead of looking at revenue per available room, we look at revenue per available seat hour, which we call RevPASH. And we calculate it by taking restaurant revenue for a meal period, and we divide that by the number of seats times the hours of that meal period. Yeah, so if we have a restaurant that has 40 seats and we serve dinner over 3 hours, then the seats available over those 3 hours would be 40 times 3, 120. So we take the restaurant revenue for that meal period and divide by 102 strategic levers of revenue management. And one is predictable duration, and the other is variable pricing, right? So if we have a lot of prices, then we can do demand-based pricing. We can make prices available or not available depending on forecasted demand. So we're not increasing or lowering prices. We start off with a lot of prices, and then we simply decide in advance which price to make available based on forecasted demand. That's it. That's revenue management in a restaurant. How long is that person going to stay seated at that table? We need to make that as predictable as possible. In the same way, in a hotel, we need to know how many people are booked are actually going to come. How many people are booked for 2 nights are actually going to stay 2 nights? Are some of them going to just stay 1 night? Are some of them maybe going to want to stay for 3 nights? We need to know that in advance. How many people are going to cancel at the last minute? How many people are going to call us at the last minute? We need to know as much as possible, to as high a certainty percentage as possible. We can never know. We can never be 100% certain of what's going to happen, but we want to get as close to 100% as possible. So 95% certainty would be ideal. And we can make some really great decisions and really optimal. We've got relatively fixed capacity. Yes, we can add a few more seats, add a few more tables, but relatively, that's our space. That's the space we've got. And that's the same in a aircraft. We're selling flights. We can add a few seats. We can take a few seats out. We can make business class a bit bigger. We can make business class a bit smaller. But at the end of the day, we can't really we can change the aircraft. We can put a bigger aircraft on if we think there's going to be more demand, or a smaller aircraft that might use less fuel. However, more or less is fixed. And in the case of a hotel, well, we can't really do much there, can we? There are times when we have heavy snowfalls, like we had a few weeks ago, when people absolutely can't get out of the city, where we might put people to sleep in the sauna, but it would be quite rare to actually do that. So we're not selling a cabin on a cruise ship. We're selling an experience. We're selling time in that cabin. We're selling time in our restaurant, and incidentally, you get a meal as well. We're selling time in the hotel, right? So that's why, if we're selling time, we've got to think about, well, there are moments when the time you spend with us is much more valuable than others. And this is all dependent on demand. How many people want it? If nobody wants it, then you can spend as long as you like, and I won't charge you very much. But if I've got loads of people that want a seat in the restaurant or a cabin on my cruise ship or whatever else, then it's much more valuable, and I have to try and restrict that time. Or I have to say to you, well, if you want unlimited time, then you might need to pay more. Not the customers. So when we're talking to customers about the fact we're doing revenue management, we need to tell them, look, tell me when you want to come. If a certain date's really important for you, you tell me when it is, and I'll tell you the price for that. Okay? But what you could do is something different. You could tell me what you're willing to pay, right? If you want to pay 20 quid, you tell me when it is you want to fly. No, don't tell me when you want to fly. Tell me how much you want to pay, and I'll tell you, look, if you fly these times, that's what EasyJet tells you. It gives you a 14-day view. If you want to pay 20 quid, you've got to fly at that time on that day. If you're flexible, that's fine, but if you can't do that, then you have to pay a little bit more. Yeah, so that's actually quite nice. I like that. I like that transparency. We never had that transparency before. Tell me who you are. You're a student, you're a senior citizen, then maybe I'm going to be willing to give you a different price because maybe you deserve it, because of your status, or because you've stayed with me many times. Yeah? You're someone that brings me a lot of revenue in the long term, therefore I might be willing to give you a better price than perhaps somebody who's never stayed before and probably or is staying for the first time and I'll never use this one of them. It pulls reservations, it pulls information from the property management system, or the central reservation system, and the hotel spells a minimum price. The minimum price in normal demand times, of course, must be above total costs. Total full unit cost, so that's our fixed cost per unit plus our variable cost per unit. However, in our low demand times, we've got to think about getting at least a contribution to our fixed costs. Therefore, our price floor in low demand times, when we have a lot of distressed inventory, will be what? Where do we go with our short-term price floor when we have extreme low demand, significant amount of distressed inventory forecast? How low can we go with our short-term price floor? What should be the minimum?
So that we cover our variable costs?
And at least make a some kind of contribution. And mostly increase the revenue on shoulder nights. That's also very important for you. So to make more revenue on the nights just before and just after the high demand day or high demand period. Okay, so we want to increase length of stay. So we might have one day where we have extreme high demand. So for example, those 2 days when the furniture show is on, what the hotels in Milan should do is to actually not sell anything to people who want to stay for 1 or 2 nights and just have a maybe 4 or 5 night length of stay restriction, so they actually make money from the furniture fair, but they also save rooms for people who are going to be arriving earlier and staying after the furniture fair. So that will increase their revenue over the period rather than just on the high demand day.